Hi, this is Bill with Montana Shares. I'm going to try to record about 3 orientation sessions. This is the first one. This would be great if you're a member representative and your executive director wants to know more about Montana Shares. This is probably the one that would be best to give them an overview of it. As we work into more and more of the finer detail, we'll move away from the executive director information to the representative information. The first thing, this is going to be available in our member space. You just simply click on the Get Started button. It brings up the table of contents, kind of an old school thing, but if you so desired, you could in fact print it out. This little arrow up here in the upper left will go on to the next file. We'll start with this. Montana Shares, our mission. Montana Shares is a partnership of Montana-based nonprofit groups devoted to improving the quality of life in communities throughout Montana. You can move down, you can look at some of these other things as far as our vision and our value, but I truthfully don't want to really go into those. I want to start with what Montana Shares is. Montana Shares is, like it says, a partnership of Montana-based nonprofit groups. What we do is we promote individual philanthropy. And put another way, we raise money for our member groups primarily through workplace giving, but also through direct contributions from individuals that are approached a couple of times a year to donate to our member groups. Okay, this is an overview of the history of success of Montana Shares. The first thing that you need to look at is originally there were 9 members and the first campaign was $11,000. And as you see, our membership has grown over the years, as has our campaign revenue. So we've gone from $11,000 in campaign revenue up to about $297,000 in campaign revenue. We've had some bigger years. This particular $383,000 had a $50,000 court settlement in it. This area here is when the recession kicked in. We've dropped a little bit. We're working on trying to bring that back up. But you can see there's been a huge growth from $11,000 to $297,000 and from 9 member groups to 35 member groups. The next question is, what's the difference between Montana Shares and United Way? And there's 3 basic differences. The first one is geography, statewide versus local. United Ways tend to be 2 to 3 counties of areas that they cover, and that's as far as they go. For instance, Lewis and Clark County is Jefferson County, Lewis and Clark County, and Broadwater County. What this means is there's groups like the American Lung Association, Wildlife Federation, Montana Food Bank, Rural Employment Opportunities, COMB in Montana. These are all statewide groups, so they don't fit into the structure of United Way because they're statewide as opposed to local. The next thing is direct services. United Ways work direct services, and I add this thing onto the end that says direct services to humans. They think that sounds funny, but there is a distinct issue there. They do direct services to humans. What this leaves out is people that are doing systemic work, and also people that are doing works with the art, people that are doing work with animals, the environment, and things like that. So the humane societies are not part of United Way, the Holter Museum of Art, Queen City Ballet. And then the third thing that's different is not that big a deal, but it is of interest. We promote donor choice. Typically, United Way givers give their gift to United Way. United Way has a allocation committee, I think it's called, and they decide where that money will do the most good in their community. We have a different attitude. We believe that it's you, the donor's choice, where your money should go. Those are sort of the 3 ways that we're different. In structure and what we do, we're quite similar. We all do workplace giving, we all do great work, and we also work quite synergistically with other United Way groups. For instance, the Montana Food Bank Network collects, I think, about 9 million pounds of food. They distribute that food to local food banks, shelters, kitchens, things like that. Most of these are often United Way agencies. Another example is Big Brothers Big Sisters of Montana is a Montana Shares group. They help and coordinate the efforts of all the local Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and about half of those are United Way groups. So we all do great work, and that's just a little bit of the reason why we exist, is for statewide groups, for non-direct service groups. This slide shows a little bit about our membership. There's been a recent change in the last year or so of membership. We used to have full members and associate members. We've eliminated those structures. We now just have members. The second level of members is we have what are called at-large members. At-large members are typically individuals who are often retired, who have been a representative for a group. They want to stay involved with shares. They come from another state. They want to be involved with shares. Anything like that. They're individuals that want to be involved with shares. The members are typically going to be representatives of groups. Underneath that, we have local shares committees. We have them in Great Falls, Bozeman, Helena, Missoula, and Butte. We don't really have any in Billings right now. And so that's sort of the structure. Then these last two slides, or last two boxes down here at the bottom, I didn't really want to move the mouse because that thing showed up there. We spend the first part of the year doing workplace access. What workplace access is all about is going out and accessing new workplaces and trying to get them signed up for workplace giving so that their employees can give to our member groups through workplace giving. Workplace access also includes improving existing workplace campaigns. If we can figure out how to make a workplace better or change it to electronic or all kinds of things like that, that's also considered access. Access is a term you'll often hear us use internally. It's kind of jargon for Montana Shares. And then the second part of the year, starting sometime around really super late July, early August through September, October, November, is when we have our workplace giving campaigns. And this is the time that employees actually have the option to sit down with our brochure, pick what's important to them, pick how much money they want to give, and then turn those pledges into us. And then the beginning of the next year, that money will actually start coming out of their paychecks, and then it will be distributed out to the groups. This next concept is a little hard to show graphically, but we're trying something different. We're adding some color to it. What this is all about is when you guys see money as members based on the giving that takes place throughout the year. So we're going to start with a previous year. In the previous fall, anytime between July and the end of the year, people have pledged. And then starting in January here, money will start coming out of their check. And then in April, May, June, money will start coming out of their check. In May, typically at our meeting or just before our meeting, this area, we will send out a quarterly check that is typically 1/5 of the money that is designated to your organization. In July, we send out the next quarterly check. In October, we send out the third one. And then as we get into this purple area, the money that's collected in October, November, and December, that's given out in January of the next year. And then we spend this period of time here in January, February, March, April doing reconciliation and finding how much was uncollectible and doing our final accounting. And then you get a fifth check, which is the cleanup check that comes out at the same time as the first check of the next year. So in May, either April or May, you'll see 2 checks. Every other time you'll see 1 check for each quarter. I hope that makes sense. This relates to the names that you get who are the people that give to you as donors. The first and most important thing is it's a confidential list. You cannot share or sell these names with anyone else. They're only for your own use. You do want to send them newsletters. You want to keep them informed. You do want to send them a thank you if you want, but without tax receipt information. We send out the tax letters for you because it's actually a donation to Montana Shares. You do not want to send any information to the University of Montana. I don't even think we give you their addresses anymore, but don't try to compile any addresses for University of Montana because it will get us barred from that campaign. Do not send any financial solicitations out to the people that give to you through Montana Shares during the period of time that they're giving to you. So approximately for a year and a half or so. Once they've pledged, once you've got their names, they're giving to you through workplace giving, and you do not want to send them solicitations for more asks. Now, if you have an envelope in your newsletter, that's just fine. That's cool. But you do not want to send an individual letter that is generic that just says please give to us, because they're already giving to you. So you want to code them differently so that you don't do that. You don't want to list Montana Shares donor names in your newsletters. So if an individual gives to you, you do not want to put them in your newsletter as a donor. Instead, you want to just have a generic thing like all the great Montana Shares donors, or Montana Shares donors, or just Montana Shares. We also send out this designation report, shows what each member group has received for the last about 6-7 years, how your group does, how other groups do. And it's real obvious when you look at this list. Lewis and Clark Humane Society is consistently the biggest recipient of funds, followed by the Montana Food Bank Network. Once you get by those ones, you get into kind of the core group. The average designation is around $7,000. We have undesignated funds that come in as well. In the past, those were split between full member groups. That's no longer the case. It's split between all member groups based on participation. And there is a policy on that, but I don't want to put it into this video. The other thing that we send out periodically is the statewide workplace report. This shows a 3-year picture of the workplaces that we're in each city. It's important to note that State Employees Charitable Giving Campaign, what we call the SECGC, this first one, accounts for approximately a quarter of the funds. Actually, right now it's accounting for about a third of the funds that we receive. It's probably the most important campaign we have. Be nice to state employees. Make sure they know that you're part of Montana Shares and how to get in touch with you and pledge to you during the workplace giving time for the SECGC. Next most important area is the combined federal campaigns. Let's see, it brings in about $40,000. And then we move into each city. We try to get into school districts, cities, counties. You can see here there's Bozeman, and we'll scroll through some of these other ones. You can see these, I can have 2 or 3 on a page. It's important to note because we are based in Helena, because probably half of our member groups are based in Helena. We have significantly a bigger number of workplaces in Helena than we do elsewhere. And then you can scroll to the end, see Missoula and others, and then what our total campaigns are. You'll receive that on a periodic basis. This is another view of our organization. Again, we have the members, the at-large members. We have a council, which is up to 12 individuals. Some of them will be representatives of groups, some will be at-large members. We have nominating committee. We have standing committees for development, finance, media, membership. Their descriptions are down here. We have an executive committee, which is 5 council members, basically the office holders plus the previous president. I think I'm going to conclude the first video at this point in time. This should give an executive director a pretty good view of Montana Shares. Stick around, watch video number 2 to get even more in-depth information as a member representative.